Hey guys, welcome back to the Morse Code Podcast. On today's episode, I had the pleasure of speaking with Tamara Keefe, founder of St. Louis's favorite ice cream, Clementine's. Now, look, every town has its local favorites, and we love to rally around homegrown brands. But in the case of Clementine's, she has a proven, verifiable national best on her hands. Clementine's has won numerous national ice cream awards. And thanks to Tamara's leadership and vision, it's quickly growing into a regional brand. I really loved the opportunity to talk with Tamara about what led up to her creating Clementine's, what the experience has been like for her growing the brand, and also where she sees it fitting into the greater St. Louis landscape. I think you're going to love meeting and hearing from Tamara Keefe. And what time is it? Oh yeah, it's Clementine. Tamara Keefe, thank you for joining me. I appreciate you taking the time.
My pleasure.
So, the founder of Clementine's, we're at 7 locations, is that right? 7 in St. Louis and 1 across the river? Do I have that right?
8 in St. Louis, 1 across the river for a total of 9.
Wow. Okay. Can you just sort of start at the beginning and walk through the life story and walk us up to what brought you to start Clementine's?
Yeah, it's funny. I had a really pretty successful career in corporate America for over 20 years.
Uh-huh.
And I think I got to a point where, I had the dream job. I had everything that I said that I ever wanted. And I kind of woke up and came to the realization that's maybe not everything that I thought it was cracked up to be.
Been there.
And so, yes. And so then it was really taking a look at my life and saying, well, okay, what do I want to do that's different?
Mm-hmm.
Right? I want to get out of the rat race. I want to get out of corporate America. What does that look like for me? And I think I was at a pretty high point in life, but maybe low point in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked a bunch of girlfriends to go out on a girls' weekend out to Lake of the Ozarks. And we were sitting there one morning having coffee on the dock. And I kind of just broke down. And I said, I'm really miserable. I want to do something different. I'm tired of being on the road. Kind of the ugly cry to open the kimono that you can only do with your closest friends. Yeah. And as I was sitting there kind of just wallowing, my girlfriend turns to me and she says, quit.
Wow.
And I said, what do you mean quit? And she says, quit. And I'm like, you don't quit corporate America. You don't quit at that level that I had got
mm-hmm.
to, which most people would say was, pretty amazing. And I said, what would I do? Right. And my other girlfriend who was there turns to me and she kind of starts laughing. And I'm like, why are you laughing at me? And she goes, you're always claiming St. Louis doesn't have great ice cream. You're always bitching, if I can say that our neighborhood doesn't have an ice cream parlor and no one makes better ice cream than you. And I was like, because my hobby and my passion since I was a kid has always been ice cream.
Wow.
And I was like, that's interesting. What's the worst thing that can happen? I could fail. Okay, well, I can go get another job.
Mm-hmm.
I was highly educated. I was at a pretty high level in my company. And maybe I wouldn't be at the same place, but I could go get another job and I just have to live in someone's basement, right?
Yeah.
Worst case scenario, you fail and you move home and you live in your parents' basement or your friend's guest house or whatever.
Yeah.
And if I was okay with that as the worst possible case, then it was worth doing. And so I said, okay. And that weekend we wrote my business plan, put together my deck and my financials.
Wow.
And I resigned 2 weeks later.
Wow.
And I said, okay, I'm going to take the biggest bet of my life and I'm going to bet on myself.
Uh-huh.
And so I did. And so I think, I ended up in the food industry, and having my love and passion and hobby be ice cream. It was the blend of these two worlds that no one in a million years could have possibly told me that all the things that I did in my life would lead me to that point.
Huh.
Right?
Yeah.
You kind of you grow up and you have these careers and you have these jobs and you're like, where am I going? What I'm doing with this? And then at some point you realize, like, oh, it set me up to do the very thing that I was called to do.
Yeah.
At this point in my life.
Funny how that works.
And so yeah, so that's really how it started. But my love and passion for ice cream really started when I was a kid. I come from this really large Irish Italian family and super humble beginnings. My family had no money. In fact, most people would probably say we were very poor. It was me and my 4 older brothers and my parents and grandparents. We just had this very large family. And it's not exactly like we were invited to people's house all the time, because that's a lot of people to invite over.
Yeah.
And so going to church, on Sundays when I was a little kid, I think I was about 7 or 8. And I had always heard kids talk about going for ice cream after. And of course, I would run up to my mom and say, oh, do we get to go for ice cream too? And the answer was always no. And as a kid, you don't really understand, or you don't really know you're not supposed to make your parents feel bad for being poor.
Yeah.
You just know that other kids get to do something you don't get to do, right? And so I was a persistent little thing, go figure. And one Sunday after church, we were driving home and we stopped by a garage sale. That's where we got all of our clothes and shoes, whatever. And my mom found an old hand crank for $2. And she says, okay, we're going to go home. We're going to make ice cream, do your chores, blah, blah, blah. Okay, great. So we got home and I was so excited. I was like, oh my gosh, we're going to make ice cream. Like, I don't think as a little kid, I even knew that you could make ice cream at home. I didn't know that was a thing.
It's like magic.
And so she's like, okay, go do your chores, change your clothes, and come back in an hour. We're going to make ice cream. So we started making ice cream as a family after church on Sundays. That's what we did. And so word got out in our church that we were making this ice cream. And so all of a sudden, all of these families started asking if they could come to our house to help make ice cream. Well, we couldn't afford to do that for all these families. But what started happening is one family would buy the milk, another would bring the cream, somebody else would bring the fruit, somebody would bring the chocolate. And so before you know it, we had all these people descending on our house.
That is so cool.
To make this ice cream. And my whole sense of community changed as a kid because of ice cream. And it was so powerful for me because we went from this family that was kind of over, we were my mom was the lady who cooked for all the old ladies and the pregnant ladies at church. My dad was always fixing the roof or fixing the door. Our family was beloved, but we weren't popular because there were so many of us. We just didn't have a lot of friends. And so what this did was it changed that whole dynamic, that whole sense of community and who we knew. And so as a little kid, all of a sudden, I have all these friends and people are coming to my house and we're invited to party. It changed everything.
Yeah.
So for me, ice cream was magical, right? Ice cream changed my whole life as a kid. And I think that always stuck with me because it's such a powerful thing. Aside from being the most emotional food product that there is, it just brings people together. And it doesn't matter who you are or where you come from, ice cream brings people together.
Yeah.
And I think that always stuck with me. And, and my mom would make the ice cream, and unfortunately we lost my mom when I was 21.
Oh.
And just really from that point, I kind of took it over and it came back I'm the only girl and I'm kind of the one who took that role and kept it. Right? Everyone moved up and on and got married. And I just loved ice cream so much. It just really was my hobby
Uh-huh.
and my passion. And so that was something that I kept to be something very special to me in my life. And so when I was there that weekend and deciding what I was going to do with my life, and when my girlfriend said that, because, I was always making ice cream for my friends and for parties, and it was like my thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so when she said that, just this light went off of like, yes, I love to make ice cream. That's what I do. I'm at my happiest place when I'm doing that. And so that was really the impetus to get me to start Clementine's. And there was a market need. And I didn't think St. Louis had great ice cream. And our neighborhood didn't have an ice cream parlor. And so I said, okay, I'm going to do that. And, I had lived this corporate life, and I had made choices for my career up until that point, so I was the token woman who climbed the ladder and who always said yes. And so, I found myself as a 38-year-old woman with no husband, no family, no kids. I never saw my friends. And I lived in this big house and I drove a fancy car and I was so miserable.
Mm-hmm.
So is that really living? It wasn't for me. And so I just had this vision of opening this little ice cream parlor in my neighborhood and meeting someone and getting married and having a kid and raising my little girl and coming to, in the ice cream parlor. And that's not exactly what happened, but
it's very Hallmark.
But I was able to. Yeah, it is. But that didn't happen. But what did happen is we created this beautiful concept called Clementine's.
Yeah,
and we've become part of all of the communities in which we serve. And it's just this wonderful, magical thing that I get to do every day.
I really do appreciate the community aspect to it. I mean, anyone who's been to a Clementine's at any of the locations can feel it. I mean, it's a gathering point, and it's a place where there are a lot of regulars, and so you start to know each other, people. It really does feel like that. It's special.
Yeah, and it's so amazing because we hire so many high schoolers and college age. We get them when they're 15, 16, and we keep them all the way through high school. We keep them all the way through college, and some of them end up like getting married, and then we end up catering their weddings, and then they have their first kid. Now we've been around so long, they have their first kid, and now we're catering their baby showers. And so we really truly are part of the thread of the communities. We're just really part of people's lives, and I think that feels pretty special.
So you had this little mini breakdown and on your girls' weekend, and you guys wrote the business plan, and 2 weeks later you resigned. Have you always been that comfortable with risk? And has that been sort of a marker for you as you've developed Clementine's and just been an entrepreneur?
No, I don't think so. I just think I got to the point where the alternative was worse. I think I was so unhappy and I was so miserable that there really wasn't an alternative. I had to do something different, or I just felt like I was going to go crazy. And because I wasn't married, because I didn't have kids, my risk level was, yes, it was risky, but it wasn't, I didn't have a family I was putting, in jeopardy or taking a risk for. My risk and my commitment was for me and my life, right, and what I had built. But I think that was easier for me at that point, because then I was just incredibly passionate and driven, and I'm like, yes, I'm going to go get this.
Yeah, wow,
and do this. And I think, just to follow on that, I think, it was so much about I was doing in my corporate life. I did so much for so many other people that I was so excited to do something for me. Like Clementine's was mine. It was about me and what I wanted and what I was going to do and what I was creating and building. And I think it stayed that way until maybe my second or third or fourth parlor. And then something changed. Clementine's was no longer about me. and it hasn't been about me for a long time, it really changed to be all about the team, all about what we're doing in St. Louis, all about creating jobs, all about doing good in the neighborhoods in which we serve. And so it was very interesting in hindsight to look back to see that change from something that was so about me and what I wanted and what I was going to do to something about like, okay, what's our responsibility in St. Louis, and how do we put St. Louis on the map, and what can we do for our teams, and how can we create this awesome place, and how can we grow and have this vision to do something really cool. It changed. It changed, and it's evergreen, and it's like this thing that just grows now. And it's kind of exciting, and it's kind of cool because it's, we're building something awesome.
Yeah.
And we're giving lots of people opportunities that wouldn't have them otherwise.
Can you talk a little bit about your approach and your point of view as far as how Clementine's fits into the St. Louis landscape, and just sort of where you'd like to see St. Louis go?
Yeah, I think the biggest obstacle that St. Louis has is itself.
Agreed.
Because, as someone who came from the outside, right? I came from Southern California, like the most amazing place to live and grow up and be. And from someone who came to St. Louis kicking and screaming and not wanting to move here when they transferred me here, to 6 months later, finding the one true love of my life, and that's St. Louis, right? And seeing everything that St. Louis was and it had to offer, and the quality of life and the cost of living and the incredible tax dollars put to work in our communities, and the free zoo and the free museums and 1,500 seats to the Muni for every show in perpetuity, and access to the arts and incredible food scene and tech scene. Like, St. Louis had all this stuff. And what's so interesting is nobody knows it. But when people come from the outside, they see it. I saw it. It's the people who live here need to recognize it and see it, because they don't know how special it is. And what's even more unique and cool, as we're expanding now regionally, into Kansas City and Bentonville, those are amazing places too, just like St. Louis. And so I think there's this thing about these flyover cities here in the Midwest, like people just don't think about us.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're like, oh, there's some little podunk city, whatever. But we're actually very cool, and we have so much happening and so much going on, and people who care, and we're doing great things, and we have all these amazing makers and entrepreneurs and businesses, and there's just so much happening in these awesome little Midwestern cities that nobody knows about. Yeah. So we've just got to get the word out there and elevate.
Yeah. I think that is such a great point about when someone comes to St. Louis and discovers it, whether it's sort of organic or whether they know what they're looking for, that the experience and the like response that it evokes in them versus the people who live here. And I wonder sometimes, so I live out in West County. I live like a stone's throw from your Town and Country location. And, St. Louis County is this sprawling expanse of suburb, and it's like 88 municipalities. And it's obviously a very different feeling out here than it is in the city, but it feels like there are communities and there are neighborhoods, and some of the different Clementine's locations are in more like Kirkwood is nice. It's got a nice little, community, but a lot of them are, just residential suburbs. And I wonder if St. Louisans are missing some of that identification or identity because there's no like cohesive gathering point, in the county at least. Maybe that's what Clementine's is for.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I do think to the outside world, it's kind of like my brothers, right? Like growing up, like they could hang me off the roof, like at home, and like beat me up because I like tease me because I'm their little sister. But outside the house, don't mess with me, right? Like that's my sister, and I think St. Louis is very much like that, right? We're super STL proud externally, but when we get amongst ourselves, we're like right, and we shouldn't be that way because we should be like, yeah, this is an amazing place, isn't it cool? And yes, to the outside world, we're STL proud. Right.
Yeah.
And I think we could learn a lot from other cities, quite frankly, like Kansas City and Bentonville. They do such a great job about being really proud of themselves for the communities that they've built and what they've done. So I'm anxious to learn how they're doing it so I can bring back and help evangelize here. I mean, even though I always do, right? Like there's no bigger proponent of St. Louis than me. It's just such a magical city. I just want to shake everyone and be like, how do you not see that?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you can still buy a house here for $100,000 in South City, like a nice little starter house, right? You can be a teacher, have a job, buy a house, save for retirement, and go on vacation. You can't do that in a lot of places in the country.
Yeah.
It's just not possible. So I just think our quality of life and cost of living and what we have going on and what we actually put back into the city. There's no city that's perfect, right? Like every city has things that they can work on. But I think St. Louis does a really, really good job at a lot of things. As someone who started a business in the city of St. Louis, downtown, I can't tell you how many people were gracious and helpful. And how do you do this? Let me direct you. Let me walk you down the hall. Let me call my friend over in this other building and let them know you're coming. I never experienced in the city in St. Louis difficulties in doing the things that I wanted to do to start my business, to grow my business, to make it better. Right? Like it's really, really a supportive place to do something, to try something, to follow your dreams, to, St. Louis, the folks in St. Louis, they love independent businesses. They're so supportive. And that's really special. You don't necessarily get that in a lot of other cities. That you do here in other places in the Midwest. So I think that's kind of the cool part and the magic. And that's why everybody comes back. A lot of people leave and they come back.
Yeah.
Right? They're like, oh, why? Oh, wow, I can raise my kids and I can buy a house. It's so many people when they're young, they're like, oh, I can't wait to get out of here. And they leave. Well, the majority of them come back at some point. So that says a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. So if I'm not mistaken, your corporate job that sucked the life out of you is that branding and marketing? Is that correct?
Yeah, I did marketing, brand, and strategy for my whole career, and I ended up in the food industry.
Okay. Yeah. I come from a marketing and branding background as well. And obviously, Clementine's, like, the ice cream's great, but the brand is also really recognizable and really unique. And you've got some really interesting kind of iconography and imagery that is a little bit unexpected. When you launched into Clementine's, I mean, I'm sure you spent a lot of energy on the R&D and making the ice cream side, but you must have loved the new opportunity to build this brand.
Absolutely. It was such a creative, fun endeavor. I knew what I wanted. I knew what I wanted our personality to be, very nostalgic and vintage, but hip, cool, and definitely with a French influence because I'm a huge Francophile. So I definitely had a perspective of what I wanted the brand to be. And I think just over time, even though in the beginning you create the brand, your brand evolves into who you are, and you are who your brand evolves to be.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like they say, you don't really like come up with your core values. You kind of live your core values, and then they kind of come to you like, oh yes, these are our core values.
Uh-huh.
So I think the brand is sort of, I mean, you have to be intentional, and you have to stick to your standards and your brand promise and your value proposition and what you do. And Clementine's does that. We do one thing, and we do it better than anything else and anyone else, right? We stay in our lane. We don't do milkshakes. We don't do this. We don't do that, right? Like in the winter, we don't do hot dogs, and we don't do, like, we don't mess, like we do one thing and we stick in our lane, and we relentlessly excel at that one thing. And I think that's really, really important to building a strong company and a strong brand.
Uh-huh. All right. So that comment made me think of two things, and I want to say them both so that I don't forget. But one was I want to get into the actual ice cream and talk about that. Mm-hmm. And the other is, since you launched Clementine's, you've really, what's it been, 10 years?
Almost 11.
11. In that time, you yourself have become a mentor to other entrepreneurs, and you're really active in the St. Louis entrepreneur community. And I'm interested to hear what that path was like, and whether it all just kind of came naturally to you, and maybe you are a natural sort of, caretaker, and you take people under your wing, and or was there a growth, like a ramp there?
I just so many people helped me and looked out for me along the way that it just was natural for me to want to help and help other people too.
Uh-huh.
Right. I think you get out of the world what you put in. And I think I look back and I had some great mentors who were incredibly smart and totally invested in me, with no other goal or agenda other than helping me and wanting to see me succeed. And I think that's kind of who, you are, who raised you. Mm-hmm. Right. And those people helped raise me, so to speak, in this business. So you just kind of want to be like they are when you grow up. And I've just been very lucky that I've had people who've been there to help guide me and steer me along the way.
Yeah. There are a number of really strong local food brands, Clementine's, Katie's, the whole Gerard Kraft thing. What's the community? Is there such a thing as a community of, is it supportive and yeah?
Absolutely. Uh-huh. I think the hospitality community in St. Louis is awesome. I know Katie really well. I know Gerard really well, right? Like on those hard days, we call each other and we're like, why are we doing this? And we're like, oh yeah. Okay. Now I remember, right? Because we kind of live it. We're living it all together. So yes, I think there's a really strong bond in the hospitality community here. Because we kind of all came up together around the same time. I think the food scene has changed so much in the last 20 years, but really in the last 10 years, right? Pappy's and Sugar Fire and, the Katie's and, and the Galenas with Vasia and Winslow's and Bernie Lee at a car. Mm-hmm. And there's so many people doing really cool things. And we all kind of came up together, and there's some beauty and camaraderie with that.
That's awesome.
Right. That we've all kind of had to create this food scene together, Ben Prim, we just all came up together and kind of have developed this scene and did it for the good of the St. Louis and the good of the food scene.
That's cool.
And that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And everyone's really helpful and supportive to each other.
That's awesome. And it's also nice that you have a little niche. You're not a pizza shop, who's friendly with, but also competing against another pizza restaurant. You've got a nice
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Nobody really does what we do.
That's for sure.
So that's great.
Yeah.
And it's even fun going into other cities and going into Kansas City and going into Bentonville. There's not really a dominant player in those markets. So it's kind of cool to go in and connect with folks because they're really excited to have you.
What does that mean the next phase is?
So I'm raising $6 million in capital. I've already raised 4.1. So I've got just a little less than 2 million to go. And that's been in the past few months. I've raised that. And so the goal is in 5 years, we're growing to 40 parlors.
Wow.
So we're expanding throughout the Midwest. We're going to dip our toe into grocery.
Uh-huh.
We're going to get into the grocery business, which we have not done very strategically up until now. We are doing some production efficiencies, and we just moved into that massive new 25,000 square foot production facility in North City. So we made that investment there. So now we have capacity for 50 parlors, and we're going to start franchising. So that capital raise is going to help us go do all of those things.
Wow.
And so the money we've raised and brought in the door so far, we're already executing on that. We're already moving forward because, again, you can only grow so much on your own. And the banks will only loan you so much. So unless you come from a really wealthy family, which I do not, for us to really grow and scale much, much faster, raising capital was my only choice.
Sure. Yeah.
And so that's what I've done. And it's exciting because we're growing, we're going into new market. We're doing things that we never thought we could do.
Yeah.
Or maybe we knew we could do, we didn't know how we would be able to afford to do it. And so the capital raise is really beneficial to really grow the company.
That's great. When I imagine, and I don't know much about anything, but when I imagine kind of the inflection points or sort of the signposts along the way, there's probably the quit your job, and then there's the open the first one, like the day the first door is open. And then I'm guessing maybe when you decide to open a second one is probably a big thing. Like, are we going to, is this going to be the direction we go? And then I'm guessing, there's other things along the way, like shipping and larger production facilities, but it probably is somewhat of a smooth trajectory until you get to this point, the capital raise. Is that right? And what was it like when you decided there's going to be more than one Clementine's and we're going to be a St. Louis brand that grows?
Really in the beginning, the only reason I opened my second parlor is because we had these 7 and 8 hour lines that went around the block that never ended in the summer.
Wow.
And I was, after that first summer, I said, oh my gosh, I have to open another location to alleviate these lines.
Huh.
That was really my driving force to open the second parlor. And then we opened Demon like a year and a half later. And lo and behold, we had the same lines that went around the block in the summer, which to this day we still have. Okay. Thankfully, the lines move fast.
Yeah.
And so it was at that point that I said, I think we have something here, because it's not about alleviating those lines because we're having same and longer lines sometimes at this location. It was, we have something that isn't out there that people want. And so it was really, that was the impetus to say, okay, we've got something, let's grow this. And let's grow this slowly and cautiously and out of our own funds. I have some national competition that took investors on really early after they had 2 or 3 locations. And I was very intentional about not doing that. I was going to grow slow. I was going to grow out of my profits. I was going to, eventually I took on some debt to do it. I wanted to grow this business as much as I could because I knew what I was doing. I knew how to do it. I knew what I wanted the product to be, and I didn't anyone telling me how to do it differently. And to get that economy of scale and go. And so I waited a really long time until I couldn't grow anymore. right?
Mm-hmm.
You get, we took on some debt to get the manufacturing facility open and to open a couple of stores. And it really pushed me to say, okay, well, for us to continue to grow and provide more opportunities for my team, I need to take on capital.
Yeah.
So now, after 8-9 parlors, now I've taken on capital. So it just made a lot more sense, and it was very cautious. I've been very cautious in how I grew my business and growing a solid business, and being proud of the fact that I can say that I've made money every year in the last 10 years in business, but doing it right.
Yeah. All right. So you mentioned, you just now said, we've got something special here. Earlier on, you said, let's do one thing, do it right, and be the best at it. And if I'm not mistaken, you are the best at it. Is that right? Did you win? Is the lore true that you won first, second, and third in a national independent ice cream makers competition? Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. No, it is absolutely true. So there is the North American Ice Cream Association that has their big industry conference every year. And the top ice cream and gelato makers in the country all submit their ice creams to be judged. And it's a blind taste test. It's between 600 and 800 people that judge all these ice creams. And in 2019, for the first time that has ever happened in over the 115-year history of the organization, we swept it. Clementines took first, second, and third in a blind taste test of almost 800 people. And the crowd went nuts. People were like, oh my gosh, who is this? Right? And that kind of just started our, I guess I would say, ice cream winning awards. So we win all of the national ice cream awards. We continue to win all the awards for the best ice cream in the country. We've won the best vegan non-dairy ice cream in the country. In the grocery sector, foods, what we constantly win bronze, gold, and silver Sophie awards. So I'm relentlessly focused at making the best product out there. It's not the cheapest by any means, but it's the highest quality. If you're going to eat it, eat great ice cream.
Did you go in? You told us your backstory that you've been making ice cream almost your whole life. Did you go into it knowing, sort of like the stereotypical story? I've got grandma's recipe, and I'm going to come and make the best chili or whatever. Did you go into it having a secret and knowing that you were going to be able to blow some minds?
No, I just went into it knowing I was going to do what I do best and make the best ice cream I could. Of course, I had some of my mom's recipes that I used. But, I went to ice cream college. I went to Penn State. They have an incredible dairy program there. So I went and did that. I've educated myself. And I came from the food industry. So I was familiar with sensory science, and I had experience with food science. And I know the best chemists and food developers, food scientists around the world. And so I, tapped into this incredible network of people who I knew to help me as well. Because, I can't just say that I did this, right? It takes a village. And especially in the beginning to do that. So, it was really doing that, and it was really looking at the market, right? I saw a need. We were the first ice cream company in the United States to make ice cream at mass for the vegan non-dairy market. That's just a market no one paid attention to.
Wow.
Yep. And same with the naughty ice creams. No one did boozy ice cream before us, and we have a trade secret process for infusing the alcohol into the ice cream. And, again, that was a market, there was a need, there was an opportunity, and it was something that other people didn't see, that I'm just very, very good at noticing and recognizing when there's demand in the market for something. And then going for it, right? It's all about execution, right? I don't claim to be the smartest, most beautiful, wealthiest, whatever woman in the world, but what I know how to do is execute way better than most people, and I just go. And you can course correct along the way, but when you're highly execution oriented, you will get very, very far.
Are you involved in the data?
I don't know if that answered what you're asking.
Oh, that was awesome. Are you involved in the day-to-day of the various flavors? Like you're always sort of rotating flavors through. What's the process for that?
Yeah, I definitely still lead the R&D effort, but it's a team. I have an R&D chef who helps me because I don't have the time to do it. In the beginning, I did it all. With, just from my background and my food science background as well. I just don't have time to do that anymore. So now I get great ideas and I work with the marketing team and we come up with stuff, and then R&D goes out and does all the work and brings them back. And I say, yes, no, change this, do that. So that's just, that part is the creative part, which is still fun.
Uh-huh.
But I have a whole team of, we have our bakery team that helps, we have lots of teams of people now to help make it successful. It's not me by any means.
So this just popped into my head, but it feels like a very interviewee question.
Sure.
If it wasn't ice cream, what would it be?
Oh, if it wasn't ice cream, what would it be? Maybe, you mean in food? Maybe bread?
Not necessarily in food, but yeah, if you had made this decision to go out on your own and start something new, and you had started something that was not Clementine's, would it be a bakery?
It might be.
Uh-huh.
It might be a bakery, because I still have these visions of expanding or having a sister concept to Clementine's. That's a very little French boulangerie.
Oh, we could use that. That'd be great.
Maybe someday. Wouldn't it be great?
Yes.
We don't have one of those. We don't have a great boulangerie in St. Louis. So yeah, maybe a boulangeries, maybe.
Definitely something in the Francophile realm, right?
Yes.
Something the French do best.
Absolutely.
Wine and cheese,
the French do best.
bread,
and,
ice cream.
And I really love to travel. Travel inspires me a lot. That's where I get a lot of my flavor inspiration from. And so it would probably also definitely include that somehow.
Maybe not of interest to any listener other than myself, but I'm a non-dairy person, and I mean, I love ice cream so much that I usually just like live with the pain. But part of the reason
you don't
why
have to do that with Clementine.
Well, yeah. So that's where I was going with that. I've had lots of different versions of vegan ice cream and plant-based, alternatives and stuff.
And they mostly all suck.
So what's the secret? It's a secret.
No, non-dairy ice creams are super hard to formulate, first of all. They're expensive from food quality of food ingredients perspective to do it right. And so that's why a lot of people don't do it. Plus, like I said, it takes a certain skill set to understand from a food science perspective how to get it to work and to work right and to taste great. Because there are a lot of non-dairy ice cream substitutes out there that just taste gross. That taste like icy, milky, tangy, weird, horrible aftertaste stuff. And so I went to work, and it took me a while. And they're hard to formulate because the ingredients that you have to use are hard to get. They're hard to manage. They're hard to create flavors for. So, we use coconut milk and coconut cream, and that has a pretty strong flavor. So you have to learn how to formulate around that with certain flavors. And it has to have the right amount of fat and protein and flavor, so there's other substitutes out there, but they don't taste great.
Yeah.
And so I work really hard. And most people don't know that our non-dairy ice creams are non-dairy. So if you come in off the street and no one tells you and you're like, oh, let me try that. You're like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. We have people who their favorite flavors are vegan non-dairy and they have no idea that they're vegan non-dairy. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So, I always think of, my girlfriend saying that and her kids and thinking about her kids, like going to a birthday party or some event and every other kid in the world can participate because they're having ice cream. Well, what if they can't have dairy?
Yeah.
There's a whole lot of people in the world who physically can't have dairy. Why should they be excluded from ice cream? Ice cream, everybody deserves to have ice cream in their life, right? And kids, like the thought of some kids not being able to eat it tears me up. So vegan was a small part of our business when we opened, and it has grown. So 25% of our offerings now are all non-dairy.
Wow.
And our seasonal flavors rotate and are non-dairy. It's definitely part of who we are. And we have a massive cult following for it because of it.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's a little, a smaller market that most people don't pay attention to, but something that just I always have, and I've made it a priority. It's no different now than, we're getting kosher certified.
Oh.
There's no other artisanal ice cream company in the
Really?
country that's kosher certified.
That's cool.
Yeah. And for me, it was because in my community, there are, certain parts of that community that can't eat anything that's not kosher.
Mm-hmm.
And so I saw little kids not eating ice cream because there's no kosher ice cream.
Yeah.
And so even though it may not really make us any money, but it's the right thing to do because I think there are some really small communities that really would like to have ice cream for their kids.
Wow.
That's good.
Yeah. Wow, what a great position to be in where you have dedicated your life to something that's a passion of yours, and also you can see it light up people's faces wherever you go, and you can make these big, business decisions like you just described just based on, I know that person deserves to enjoy this just as much as I do. That's really cool.
Thank you. Yeah. I like I said, even on my worst day, it's great because I get to make people happy every day.
Yeah.
Right? Like I don't really have a bad day. I make ice cream for a living.
Yeah. You just said I don't really have a bad day, but I like to ask people what a bad day looks like when they're talking about something that sounds kind of amazing and idyllic. And obviously people have bad days. Maybe it's just that you have a lot of big decisions to make because you're running a fast-growing, relatively large organization.
Yeah, I mean, we all have bad days, right? When things don't go as planned, what do they say? You make a plan and God laughs, right? A bad day can look like, something happening in someone's family and they have to resign and move away and you don't have someone ready to backfill that position. A bad day is that, in my business, it rains, thunderstorms, snowstorms, and we have no business for 3 days. Those are really bad days because those are revenue days that we need to help pay salaries and wages and things like that. That's a bad day, right? I'm out fundraising, right? Like getting in front of a lot of people and no one believing in my vision. That can be a hard day, right? No one likes to be told their baby's ugly.
I don't think anyone's telling you your baby's ugly.
I know, but sometimes that's how it feels, right? No, I'm kidding. No, I mean, lots of things can constitute a bad day, but at the end of the day, I don't know. I feel like I'm so blessed with what I get to do that even on those bad days, I'm grateful for the opportunity to have bad days. Mm-hmm. And if there weren't bad days, there wouldn't be good days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I get to do this.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I get to sit here and talk with you and like, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like I'm super grateful, that I've been able to follow my dreams and build this thing and provide opportunities for people. So when the bad things happen or there's crappy days happen, you just kind of look at them as it's an opportunity and challenge, and tomorrow is different. And guess what? It's ice cream, right?
Yeah.
If we run out of a flavor in a shop, there's other flavors. It's just ice cream. It's not rocket science. No one's going to die.
Yeah.
It's ice cream. Right. So
Yeah.
like putting it kind of in perspective too, right? As long as, God willing, like I'm healthy, my team's healthy, people are healthy, we're doing good things. I don't know. That's kind of the way that I look at it.
Yeah. I really appreciate you taking the time. This was really fun. You were game as I went all over the map, and that was fun too. I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah. I'm really excited to get to meet you, and I'm a big fan of Clementine.
Thank you. You too.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Well, we love to be part of your life. So thank you.
Thanks. Yeah.
Game over.